as Dave mentioned, I head up the optimization team here at House of Kaizen. I'm going to be talking to you today about why we think that all brands should be focusing on customer lifetime value next year. And I'm going to be sharing with you some of the work we've been doing with the Wall Street Journal as well, just to hopefully demonstrate some practical examples that you can take back to your business. Which way does this go?
The down arrow.
Wrong way again.
Yeah.
Cool. So before we dive in, I just want to really set the scene with the definition of customer lifetime value and what it means to House of Kaizen. So to us, customer lifetime value is the average amount of money that your customers will spend with your business over the entire lifetime of the relationship. So the key differentiator for us here, and really the big shift, is we're focusing on that lifetime of the relationship. We're not just talking about that session, that website visit they give you at that moment in time. And why is it so important? There's so many studies have been done around this, and we wanted to just pull out sort of three key insights that we found. This first one, I'm sure many of you heard this before, really focuses on the cost of acquisition. So what we can see is that it costs 5 times as much to acquire a new customer than it does to keep an existing one. So let's say, hypothetically, based on that, you then start focusing on retaining your customers. If you see an increase of just 5% in your retention rate, that can increase your profits by anywhere between 25 and 95%. Huge, huge opportunity there. And why is that? Well, one, the cost of selling is cheaper. But importantly, the probability of selling to existing customers is so much higher. So 60 to 70% is hopefully where you should be selling to. Whereas for a new prospect, you're looking at about a 5 to 20% conversion rate. So again, you can see that the cost of selling is lower. The actual probability of selling to these people is higher. As a result, you can start to see really big impacts on the bottom line and in the long term as well, not just in the short term. And what's interesting is that marketers have been talking about customer lifetime value, the importance of it, for years. Like, some of these articles go back 10 years, and the messaging hasn't changed. But still, what we're seeing is that a lot of businesses aren't actually actioning on this. eConsultancy did a huge report towards the end of last year, which I'd recommend you all read, which really looked to probe, well, where are businesses with customer lifetime value? Interestingly, what we can see is that 31% said that their company had a basic understanding of customer lifetime value. 24% said it was non-existent. That's over half of the organizations and the marketeers. Nothing much is being done. Still a huge opportunity. And from an optimization point of view, we are having conversations with brands from lots of different industries in the UK, in the US, and what we're seeing is pretty consistent. Optimization is still very much focused on conversion rate. So that first point of contact on the landing page, the home page, all the way through to the checkout. Now, obviously, really focusing on optimization for acquisition is incredibly important. You need to keep growing that customer base. What about at the end? These people are having this amazing experience, yet they're more likely to come back if that experience is brilliant. But then no optimization effort is being done on how do we get them to engage with our product? How do we get them to engage with our service? How do we get them to come back more and buy more products? And the Wall Street Journal was such a big case of this. We started working with them back in 2016, and we came in under the remit of acquisition. And for those of you not so familiar with the Wall Street Journal sort of subscription offering, they have an introductory offer, which is $12 for 12 weeks, and then you can buy a 6-month or a 12-month subscription as well. They didn't care if people bought 12 weeks or 12 months. They just wanted volume, volume, volume. What that meant, though, people were coming in on the 12 weeks, they were churning after those 12 weeks, maybe a bit earlier, and that was it. The engine had to just keep going. And at this time as well, they were seeing a pretty steady decline in their membership growth. And this was round about the time that print circulation in general was suffering, and there was this big shift to move towards digital. And in response to this, they set a company-wide goal, which was we need to reach 3 million members within the next 3 years. You can imagine with that decline, everyone was pretty panicked, especially their acquisition team. And what they quickly figured out, I'm very glad I realized this quickly, was that if they kept just selling this 12 for 12 weeks pack, which had this very high churn rate, they couldn't get enough people in the door versus the people that were actually cancelling towards the end. And as a result, they decided, right, we need to start focusing on engagement and retention. They did a restructure, they brought a lot of new people in, and our remit began to expand as well. And as a result, a year later, the big focus became on engagement. So how do we engage people with their subscription? How do we get them using the features and the benefits that are really going to make them enjoy this product? And then how do we create habits around it so we don't have to keep nudging them like, hey, remember, we've got an app. Get them using that app. Get them using it every day. And then finally, that churn prevention. So this area, you get them using that product so they're less likely to churn. But realistically, there's always going to be that point where they are going to go and try and cancel. So here it was really trying to bring down that cancellation rate. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more first around the engagement and habit side. So just to familiarise you all, this was the onboarding experience for the Wall Street Journal. You'd hit your thank you page, there would be a cross-sell for their Barron's subscription, and then after a few seconds, you get a redirect onto this page here. So this is what we call My WSJ. It lists 4 different features of a membership, so the app, newsletter, WSJ Plus, which is their sort of rewards and offer program, and their social channels. And what was interesting is that these 4 actions here, these were just based on intuition. The business thought, I think members are going to find these pretty valuable. Let's really push them. So push there, and then they were also pushed in the welcome series emails. So 6 emails would go out within a 2-week period. And as part of this process, they took this step back and thought, there are so many actions people could be doing. There's so much content. What is actually going to make members stay for longer? And that was where the Habit Project kicked off. So they looked at all the different actions that a member could take within their membership. Turns out there are 50 different actions. And this isn't just features. This is types of content that they could be engaging with, types of authors. And they looked at, okay, well, within those first 100 days, did they take that action or did they not? And then what was the impact on the retention rate? So if they took the action, how long did they stay for longer? And also how likely were people to take that action? But then if they didn't take the action, for example, they didn't download the app, what impact does that actually have on their retention rate? How likely were people to do this? And from there, this framework was born. So what we can see here is these are the actions that someone can take which they're pretty unlikely to do it, and they're not sticky. They don't impact retention rate. Not so bothered about this area. Up here, very likely to do, but not sticky. Very sticky, but not likely. And then here is where the gold is, the highly likely and the very sticky. We can see here where they mapped all the different actions that people could take into this framework. Straight away, we could see, okay, well, we've got 12 actions here, highly sticky, medium likelihood to take them. And then we've got 8 highly likely and 8 medium-ish impact on retention. So straight away, we knew that those 20-odd were the ones we had to really focus on. And then the next question was, well, when should we start talking to them about these actions? We've got 20 actions we want them to take. Turns out 100 days was the real sweet spot, which roughly ties in with that 12-week subscription that people were buying, the 90 days. But that first day, that post-conversion experience immediately after, was really where we had the biggest and best opportunity to unlock gold there. So again, just as a reminder of this experience, this is where people were going to. We did a lot of testing, a lot of research around this page, and what we quickly found out was this page structure, this page design just didn't work. People felt overwhelmed with 4 actions, let alone if we wanted to promote 12, 15, 20 actions. The value proposition was relatively generic as well. It wasn't focused on what the customers actually valued. It was written by internal departments. It was also relatively hard to take an action. You click subscribe on that newsletter, it takes you out to the newsletter center. That's it, you're out of that MyWJ journey. We've done a huge amount of testing within this space. Over the last 18 months, we've ran 15 pretty big tests, and what we have now is what we call the onboarding flow. So what happens is you hit the thank you page, There's a CTA on the thank you page where people then go into the onboarding flow. Around 75% of people enter that flow. And then we have a card for each of the actions. And what that means is that people are really focused on that one action in time. They're just focusing on the content that you've presented there. And then naturally we put the stickiest actions first, because there was naturally a depletion in attention as people went through. And the WHA data science team did a really interesting piece of analysis a couple of months ago. And they found on average, if people just enter the onboarding flow, their retention rate goes up by 18%. So if we think back to that 5% increase in retention, what impact that had on profitability, that's a pretty big impact. We then looked at that post experience as well. So yep, they've been through the onboarding flow, they may not have been through it. How do we then target them with these benefits still? So as I mentioned, there was a welcome series email. Through this, we did a complete refresh of the design, of the layout, and most importantly, the value proposition. 'Cause as I mentioned earlier, it was very generic, very short, wasn't compelling whatsoever. So using research, we completely sort of redesigned that. And then we didn't want to just hope that people opened their emails. We know how busy people's inboxes get. So we also looked at on-site targeting. So if you go to whj.com now on your mobile phone, there'll be this one-time pop-up that will try and promote people going to the app. Because we know if people read in the app rather than reading on mobile web, they will have a better experience, they'll come back more, they'll have a higher retention rate. We did an email campaign as well, so that, for example here, if you haven't signed up to a newsletter, after a certain period of time, we'd send them a polite nudge via email, inviting them to sign up to newsletters, and there was a few different examples of this. And then also sort of recreating this membership space that they could go to if they want to find out a little bit more about the benefits. And this is all very sort of active and ongoing at the moment. And then finally, content. Funny enough, content is very sticky for the Wall Street Journal. But in particular, there are certain authors that actually have a much bigger impact on the retention rate. And what we looked at was introducing what's called follow functionality. And you see this quite often now across editorial sites. Here we have, there's a small nudge which just asks people to follow. And from there, you will get an email newsletter every time that editor then publishes a new piece of content. Drives them back to the site, engaging with that content is a nice cycle that we're creating. And we've also been doing a lot of testing on the editorial sites as well, so looking at the layout of the article page, the home page, how we can best motivate people to read another article, just one more article every session. And as a result, members are engaging more with the benefits, they're seeing more value from their membership. Every month they have an opportunity to cancel, but they don't. More of them are staying for longer. They're seeing value. And as I mentioned earlier, their retention rate has gone up by 18%, and that's just from the onboarding flow, not even taking into account all the other engagement activity we've done. And ultimately, that increased the lifetime value of those members. So now, if we have a look at the cancellation process. So historically, if you wanted to cancel, you'd call up the call centre. The staff there are highly trained. They have scripts that have been informed by our testing, by research, have an excellent save rate. But unfortunately for the Wall Street Journal, a law was introduced in California, which meant that if you lived there and you subscribed online, you had to also be able to cancel online. And California is the first state, but the law's also been passed in New York and a few others. California also happens to be the largest state of members for the Wall Street Journal. They quickly put up this cancellation flow, which had a 100% cancellation rate. Not surprising, there's no human intervention. They didn't know anything about these people. It was just this process you'd go through to cancel. So pretty quickly, we had to put a lot of focus in this area. And what we did first was we did a big piece of research, really focused on understanding, well, why are these people churning? Why don't they see value in their membership? Why do they think it is too expensive? Looking at the product understanding, is it that they actually weren't aware of all the benefits and the features they got with their subscription? Or did they just didn't value it? And then finally looking at save tactics. So naturally, the save tactic that organizations usually go for is let's just give them a special offer. Let's get them on a 50% special offer. But what we wanted to also explore was, well, maybe they would actually be better on a different subscription pack. So rather than digital, they move to an app-only pack. And then could we also save them by pausing their subscription for a month? Maybe they're just going on a long holiday and they don't want to keep their paper to keep arriving. And then from that, we found sort of 3 key areas for testing. The first one was through value statements. Now this one is really important because we would try and save people with value before we hit them with that special offer. So again, it means that we're trying to retain as much of that margin as possible. And here, the value proposition was very much informed by the research, but also from the Habit project. So we wanted to make sure we were surfacing value statements, membership benefits that we knew would have a longer term impact on their retention rate if they did stay as a customer. We then looked at the special offers, so what level of discount should we be offering? Should it be a 6-month subscription, 12-month subscription? Do we charge them monthly? Do we charge annually? These are all the sorts of elements that people, when they're cancelling, you're asking them to stay and actually pay more money. These are the sort of things you have to really think about. And then finally, this is the area we're currently testing at the minute, is moving them to a different subscription pack. So for example, if you have the digital pack, looking to move you to the app pack. And as a result, through that flow, bearing in mind these people are at the point of they're ready to cancel, they've come here with the intent of cancelling, we're reminding them of that value that they could see from their membership. Maybe they're not seeing it now, but we've just reminded them it's actually a lot of value that they could be getting. Or they could be moving to a different offer, to a different pack, and now 25% of people are being saved. Think how many people have a Wall Street Journal subscription. We're talking a good couple of million. That's a lot of people that are being saved every month. And before I finish up, I did want to talk about acquisition as well. So there's an important shift that we have seen at the Wall Street Journal, which has been around how they measure their testing. So to start with, just going to walk you through the journey that you would take if you were purchasing a subscription. So you'd go to wshape.com. The editorial site naturally was a big channel for them from an acquisition point of view. But straight away, you'd be hit with this paywall. You couldn't engage with the content. You could see the image and the headline, that was it. You would then go into the shop, checkout, done, you've got a subscription. But what they were finding is that people can't assess value if they can't see the content. We live in a world where people are used to being able to read content. Google used to have the first click free, whereas now they were just locking down everything. And what that meant is people just weren't willing to commit. They would go for that introductory offer, lower cost, lower length, but for the Wall Street Journal, higher churn rate and a much lower lifetime value. So what their data science team did was they wanted to try and identify different signals that really gave them an idea of how likely are these people to convert. And these signals came from anything from their demographics through to their on-site behavior, through to their device type. And they started to be able to build out a readership profile for every single person. So we've got 2 examples here. We have reader 1. They were first seen 72 days ago. So their familiarity with the brand is pretty good. They've read 10 articles across markets, life and business, mostly come through social, live in an urban area, and would mostly use iPhones when coming to the site. Reader 2, on the other hand, they were only seen 8 days ago. They're still learning about the Wall Street Journal. They've only read 2 articles, which were in the Life and Opinions section. And they live in a rural area and tend to visit on Mac. What you can see is very, very different likelihoods to convert. We can see Reader 2 had a 0.15% likelihood. And the reason for this was the weightings that were applied. So yeah, they were only seen 8 days ago. They only read 2 articles. But Life and Opinion, if you read those articles, you're much, much more likely to convert with that content. They visited directly rather than via social. Their intent was higher when they arrived on the site. And finally, Mac desktop, much higher conversion rate than iPhone. And what this meant is that they could then start really creating a personalized experience. So if you had a high likelihood to convert, maybe start locking down some of that content so that they have to go and start thinking about buying a subscription. And how much content should we actually be showing? And as a result, visitors were getting a much more relevant, experience, they weren't just locking down that content. And people were then, not only were they buying more, but they were committing for longer. They were buying a longer term subscription. And in terms of measurement, so with this big goal in mind, a lot of the testing began to focus on, okay, what packs should we offer? What should the pricing be of these packs? And what's interesting here is, typically in an acquisition world, your KPI is volume, it's conversion rate. But we had to really focus on the long-term measurement. So when we were testing, introducing different packs, testing different price points, the discount, how long the subscription length should be, do we do annual versus monthly, we had to move away from that. We couldn't just look at conversion rate. What we started to do was collect order IDs for every single test. We wouldn't call a winner until we're about 3 months after the test had ended. And that was so we could actually monitor what happens after that. For example, variation 1 could be the winner in your testing tool. Great, let's roll out variation 1. That's what we used to do. But what we do now is we wait for that 3 months and then we look, okay, well, actually variation 2, while that had a slightly lower conversion rate, these people are sticking around for so much longer, and they actually bought longer term subscriptions as well. Variation 2 then became our winner and would then be implemented. So just to wrap things up, as I mentioned, we've seen a huge shift from the Wall Street Journal, really moving from acquisition into these key areas. And actually, the area of testing we're doing here, we do twice as much testing in engagement than we do in acquisition, just to show how big a shift we've done, not just in terms of budget, but in terms of strategic focus within the business. And as a result, in 2018, they did finally reach that goal. And this growth, they continue to see this growth. That hasn't just now plateaued. They're still seeing huge growth there. And to wrap up, 3 key takeaways for you to all hopefully take back. Hopefully you've seen today that from an optimization point of view, the mindset really needs to start shifting away from just focusing on acquisition to also putting customer lifetime value at the heart of it. Yep, acquisition can still play a part of that, but you really need to look at how you can persuade users to engage with your product, engage with your service to get that long-term value. And then finally, the way to really achieve this is a shared goal. That is really what brought the Wall Street Journal together. We've spoken to quite a few businesses recently who have said, yep, customer lifetime value is what we're doing. Like, where does that come from? Like, what are the other teams doing? And there's breaks there, and that is why nothing is really being achieved. So that shared goal, bringing everyone together, is absolutely key. Thank you.